Yeah, you mentioned language being a passion for both of you, but we wonder, what is at the core of Unbabel? Is it sort of the whole concept of artificial intelligence being able to, break models and do things differently, or is it the language passion? What is the real core? One of the two.
That is a long, a long discussion by itself, because we debate quite often. I can tell you, I don't know if I think maybe things are move us in slightly different ways, right? For me, I feel that it's the core is really the interplay between humans and AI. I think that's where the crux is. So it's not about just AI or just humans. It's actually what you get in the combination of both worlds. Right. And you can look at it from different lenses. You can say, hey, are the humans helping AI, or is really AI making humans more productive? But I think it's when I look at, and for me, this fits into a bigger theme of when I look at human evolution and how we're going to continue to evolve in the way we work. I think AI is going to is already, but it will become even more present, a bigger presence in our lives. And so the way that we are going to start using AI in different tasks that we do is going to continuously be more symbiotic. And so it's that symbiosis and the way that we connect the two that I think makes the difference. Because at least for me, I don't know, what do you think, João?
I took your question as a different perspective, which is, are you more linguistic, are you more language linguistic center, or are you more AI center? And I think there's actually like my passion on AI, and I got there, I got to natural language processing a little bit randomly. I wanted to go to games, and I love it. I love the challenge of understanding language. And there's kind of the misconception that you're either linguist person or a machine learning person, maybe because of the jelly neck times and his famous quote. But we're not. Like, from the beginning of Unbabel, we had like people with a PhD in linguistics in very high positions. Now, if you ask me, do you think that Unbabel will be different if the founders came from a PhD in linguistics as opposed to a linguistic PhD in AI? Yes, I do. I think there's a different mindset on how you tackle the problem. And I think we have that mindset. But I don't think you can do without both.
All right, let's talk a little bit about your focus as a company, because from the start you've targeted very clearly the customer support vertical. How did that happen? Why did you select that out of many other possibilities?
So when we started, we were doing we tried a bunch. We built this thing, the wheel of use cases, where we try to map out, okay, what are the things we're seeing, where there are potential use cases for what we're building. And I think one thing that emerged is the kind of general area of communication. And the reason for it was, if you think about, let's say, translating an email. When you translate an email, you still need it to be semantically, syntactically, morphologically correct. So very much an issue. You need to represent your brand and your tone of voice. But it needs to be super fast. You can't wait a day to translate an email. And if you're going to scale it, it needs to be cost efficient. And so what we were seeing is quality meant that machine translation by itself wasn't possible. And in fact, state-of-the-art machine translation translates on a sentence by sentence base. So if you have an email with multiple sentences, there's an probability accumulation of error. But at the same time, traditional LSPs couldn't really do this because their turnaround times weren't nearly fast enough to handle this in translating emails. And so we found, okay, here's something that can't be done yet, which is using translation to enable real or near real-time communication. And then when we looked into that, we started thinking that customer service is a great point, because it is an implementation of this communication. So emails and chat apply to customer service. And there's a couple of interesting benefits, which is, one, you are training your AI with a data set that is not available to anyone. I mean, customer service emails, and you're also, in a way, the heart of the company's communication. Once that data enables you to learn how a company communicates, their tone of voice, the expressions that they use. which means that when we expand to other use cases, we'll be able to reuse a lot of that known, that acquired knowledge. And so that made sense for us. And and until we started, the idea of leveraging translation to change the way you do customer service wasn't really a thing. People would hire, you know, the alternative is hiring people. That's a big problem, because, you know, you get to these big organizations that have thousands of customer service agents spread around the globe, and managing that in terms of workforce and scaling is incredibly hard.
So we read you have about 150 enterprise customers now in the vertical of customer support. The translation makes you the leader, I guess, in that vertical. Do you see any competition coming? Is your position on the threat or not at all? And what's your thought about diversifying into other verticals?
So, you know, Steve Jobs used to always say that the biggest threat is the two guys in the garage building what you're not seeing somewhere, right? And I think we do live in a world that you don't need a massive team to build something meaningful anymore. Even in AI nowadays, right? It used to be you needed an entire team of PhDs to build a machine learning algorithm, and now you have PhD students that are doing state-of-the-art neural networks in 3 months, right? And so, and soon you'll have teenagers doing that, because the tools for using AI and TensorFlow and a bunch of other stuff are just getting better and easier. I think in customer service, we're seeing the market shift towards us. What I mean by this is, you know, 3 years ago, we wouldn't see any competition in customer service in the layer of customer service that we do. So the alternative was really just, hey, you hire people that speak the language. Lately, what we're seeing is there is, especially with neural machine translation, you're seeing some companies, you know, like Google with AutoML. There's a few other initiatives for bigger companies that are trying to, okay, what are the logical next step applications of that? But, you know, for me, I think it would be weird if we don't have competition. Competition validates the market, right? And it kind of shows that people are seeing this as an important market. And so we're not seeing it from LSPs yet. You do, like, speed is paramount. And so without the speed, you can't compete. And so right now we're still, I think we're still 2-3 years ahead of any of our competition because of that combination. We haven't seen a really equivalent solution that does that combination of AI and humans as we do applied to customer service and communication. So we're seeing more from the tech side. But in any case, I think if we're going to build the world's, our goal is not to build the customer service translation layer, it's to build the world's translation layer. And so it feels logical that we will start hitting center of mass of localization market some point in the future, probably sooner rather than later. I think that our goal is within the next 2 years to start expanding into other use cases.
You don't have anyone on your radar yet? Another vertical?
We have a few.
Okay, you don't want to talk about that?
Not quite yet.
Keep it secret for now, all right?
Yeah.
It's under development. I mean, if you think about one other thing of customer service is like it presents a lot of easier things, like it's one-to-one communication, so it's more tolerable to errors, it's shorter content. So this allows us to solve a lot of problems of automating quality. That then once they're solved, now we can go to the other problems.
Yeah.
And we want to have a product approach. We want to have a disruptive product, whatever is the next use case that we're going. Because if we just go and do exactly the same that all the LSPs do, then we don't really have a lot of advantage. MT by itself is not the advantage.
Something that TAUS used to talk about for years is that translation should become a utility, something that's available in every single product and every single service. And it seems recently that it is, you know, it's a part of our everyday life. There are so many apps available out there. People do find ways to communicate. So I do wonder what's that one difference that Unbabel makes or would make as a world translation layer.
So that's a great question. I think that we live in a world where companies need to be globalized sooner, right? It's just, you're seeing it as companies have access to markets, especially as everything becomes digital, there's less barriers to enter markets. But at the same time, consumers are used to consuming information in their own language more and more. So English is actually no longer the dominant language on the internet in terms of content, and people produce content in their own language through social network. What you're seeing is really the rise of a Russian internet and a Chinese internet and a Brazilian internet, and there's the segmented spaces where people expect to be served in their own languages. So it's, on one hand, you want to reach markets faster. On the other hand, they expect to be served in their own language. So if you look at it from a consumer perspective, yeah, if you're a consumer, you want to get the gist of something, you have, you know, a set of apps. But if you're a company, your solution to tackling a global problem and a global market is a hodgepodge of solutions. You know, you go to, you know, your website, okay, your localization team handles that, and there's a tool for that. And then your marketing content, oh, that's a different tool, sometimes a different vendor, a different solution. Then customer service, well, for the most part, you have to hire people that speak the languages. Now you need to do sales. Oh yeah, that for sure, you need to hire people that speak the languages because there's no real solution there. And then you have teams that span different countries. You know, you have a team in Japan and a team in Brazil. How do they communicate? There's no really good solution for that either, right? And so some cases there's no solution. Some cases there's a hodgepodge of different solutions. There's no unified way of how do you actually enable all of these business functions to work seamlessly in a way that is coherent across the company. Because when you use different solutions, it means that you're not necessarily doing a consistent kind of communication, a consistent kind of branding. You're not respecting linguistic style guides across different use cases. You're not benefiting from the data that you're generating. And if you think about it, every single thing that you do inside a company is expressed in some language, whether it's an email, a chat, a call, something, right? We express by speaking and talking, and all of that is through a language. And I think that perspective doesn't exist yet, but it should. It should be as simple as, if I'm a company, you know, and I want to expand to a new market, I should be saying, now I can do Italian, right? And everything should be taken care of. I shouldn't need 6 months of trying to figure out how do I localize my website and then go to another vendor to do another little bit and bob and make everything hard. And we see that if you think about, you know, companies grow to a certain size, and then they go, okay, let's expand to 2 or 3 languages. We're going to go, if they're in the US, they're going to go to Europe or to Asia. But how many companies can successfully deal with 100 languages? There's very few, right? You have like Google, Microsoft, the big companies, while there is the only reason why mid-sized companies shouldn't be in all the markets if they have a digital product is because dealing with language is such a big problem, right? I have never met anyone that, and typically if you think about localization departments, they a lot of times report into marketing departments. And so the marketing leader doesn't want to own localization, is like hoisted upon them. And so there's like, oh, it's this friction thing that I need to deal with, and it's kind of a necessary evil. And so it becomes like, I've never heard anybody say, you know what, we localized into, you know, we entered a new market and we did everything in a new language, and it was so easy. It's always a pain, it's always delays, it's always a problem, right? So it clearly, we have not created this way that seamlessly enter new markets across all the business functions of a company in a unified and consistent way. And I think that's the real power, right? It's, in the end, it's not translation for translation's sake, is what translation enables as a growth lever and the ability to access new things.
So how many languages do you cover now with
28.
Sorry, 28?
28.
I think it's a little bit more now, but...
oh, did we extend? Amazing. We're doing this all the time.
Yeah, but just, well, I mean, yeah. I think it's mostly like, and what Vasco is mentioning is mostly because there are fundamental technologies gaps that haven't been solved. Like simple things. How do you set up a system that keeps a website translated and updated? Like, it's hard because that's why like most people don't have the website in multiple languages and constantly updated. The other thing is like, why do you need a localization department and LSP? A lot of times, all those loops of QA, that's just because the technology to get consistent quality translation is not there. Otherwise, you don't want all of that. That's a project that you're managing back and forth. You just have a button, or it will be completely automatically, and you say, let's translate this. So I kind of disagree with your initial point. I don't think there are a lot of solutions. I think there are a lot of like really bad solutions that fit really small use cases and that take a lot of work. Even the apps that you download for consumer, you know, they use Google, they use machine translation, which is more or less, but try to have a real conversation with someone using those tools. It's an advanced way of having a phrase book. It's a kind of set of interaction, but it's not something that you can just automatically start having a conversation and talk. I think we're very far away from having a a translation layer.
When we have this world translation layer, where do you see actually localization sitting?
So I would ask, I'd answer the question, which is, where do the functions that are core to the functioning of a company sit, right? When you have things that are cross-functional and affect every department of a company and enable those departments to function properly, they sit in operations, right? If translation is part of the core operation of a company, then it should be part of the operations.
Part of the factory, yeah.
Yeah, the enabling tissue of, of something working properly.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. That makes sense. Yeah. By the way, I'd like to come back to that 28 languages. That seems a little limited to me. The world is so much bigger. How difficult is it for you to roll out a new language pair?
It's not
that hard. It's mostly like a demand question. So the thing, like, given that we're community based, we need to have certain volume to keep a community, because otherwise they just disappear. And invest some effort. So this is mostly like, I think we're now around 35, but I need to check this. But it's more like, if we have a constant volume that is coming, then we maintain a community, and we can kick off a community in like 2, 3, 4 weeks. We kind of have the processes defined, and it starts by getting like a really good linguist that then gets a bunch of professional translators that then starts building the community. So we learn a lot how to manage this community to provide quality. This is one of the points that we're suffering a lot when we started. Like, we didn't know that. We didn't really understand quality. And so we had these communities that were polluted. So it was very hard to get quality. And there's always going to be errors because of humans, but we kind of learned the lesson of how to set this up and get a clean community. It's a little bit like Yahoo and Google email. So Yahoo started opening email to everyone, and then it's just spam. Google learned the lesson. They started opening just for their employees first, so they could actually train good spam filters on correct usage. And when they open to the world, they're much better. So this is learning from a Yahoo experience. I think we'll learn from our previous experience.